me, Jesus. Hey, y'all. So this week is week 14, and I want to talk something that hit me while I was working on my book, right? Not because I planned some perfect message, not because I sat down and said, okay, this is what I'm going to work on this week. This is what I'm going to talk about this week, right? Kind of laid things out. It was more like I was going through chapters that I've already got like locked in my book, right? I've already written like the whole book and stuff. So now I'm just going back and revising, editing, making the finals of the book, right? So I was going back from the very beginning, and I came back across chapter 3, right? And it just hit me differently now. And the chapter is called "Pit I Could Not Climb Out of." And when I first wrote it, I knew it was heavy, right? Because it was part of my testimony. And I knew it had to be in this book, because if I don't tell the truth of how deep the pit was, right? How deep that pit that I was in, then nobody can really understand what God has actually saved me from, right? But reading it now, after losing Kody, it did something different to me, because grief changes the way that you read your own life. Things that you've already lived through, they start sounding differently. Things you've survived years ago start connecting, like the pieces in a puzzle, right? Like I talked about last week, to the person that you are now. And this is not clean. It's not pretty, right? Not everything in this makes sense back then the way it makes sense now, right? And I mean, I still do not understand why I am here, why my son is in heaven, right? And I'm going through this, right? I do not. I'm the first one to admit that. I do not understand why this has to be this way. I still have a lot of questions for God. My faith, that's never been in the question, but I still have a lot of questions. Still miss Kody with a pain so deep that I don't even know how to describe that to make someone understand, right? But when I was reading this chapter, right, again, just going back over things, I realized something, that God had been teaching me how to survive long before I even understood why I would need to know how to survive, right? And I want to be careful with that, because I'm not saying that God caused everything bad that happened in my life to teach me a lesson. He doesn't do that, right? I'm not saying that God caused all this pain so he could use it later. I'm not saying that either. I'm saying that before I ever understood who God was, believed in God, he was already working in the details before I ever knew that one day I would need to go back and review those details at a different angle, in a different light, just like my puzzle. God knew the beginning and the end. He already was reaching for me in the middle of a mess I didn't have language for yet. Not a polished mess, not a pretty testimony by any means, just the truth that sometimes you do not know what God is building inside of you until you are standing in something that you never wanted to be standing in the first place. So I want to read parts of chapter 3. Not all of it, not the whole thing. I'm not trying to turn this into like my audiobook, because when the book becomes available, I'll do the audio on there. But I want to read parts of it, right? Just sections out of that chapter that explain the pit, right? And I want to talk about why it hits different now. Again, just as a cursor, there may be some censor warnings on here, but they're real because they're parts of my own story, and they're not pretty. And I don't tell my story, right, for like a pity party, right? Oh, look at her, poor thing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not telling it for that, right? I'm telling it because things happened, right? These are things that I went through, and they're necessary to see what God has brought me through, right? All right, so let's go ahead and read like the first part of a section in there on there. So on my 17th birthday, I snuck out of the house that night to go to a party with some of my so-called friends. They were having a party for me. I thought I was going to a birthday party. I thought I was walking to a place where I belonged. When we got there, it was only me, a guy from night school, and his 3 older brothers. That is one of the most painful truths in all this. I was not walking into something that looked dangerous to me. I was walking towards what I believed was belonging. That is what makes betrayal so deep. That got me wasted to the point I couldn't stand. I thought I was safe because I was with my friends, the same guys that I had always hung around. But the drunker I got, the more aggressive they got. Everything changed. They pinned me down. I fought hard. I got free long enough to run out the door, about half dressed trying to escape. But they caught me. They didn't care that we were outside. They didn't care that I was trying to get away. They wanted what they believed they deserved from me. And at some point I blacked out. Then when I got home, I went straight to the shower. I took off my clothes and turned on the water as hot as I could stand it and gathered everything, every household cleaner I could find. Bleach, glass cleaner, toilet cleaner, anything. I sat in the shower pouring it all over myself, scrubbing my skin as hard as I could. I felt dirty, violated, alone, lost. I was trying to clean off something that was never going to come off with household chemicals and enough force. That is what trauma does when it enters the body that has nowhere safe to place what happened. It turns the pain inward. It turns blame inward. It makes a girl try to scrub away something that was never hers to carry in the first place. So after the rape, I did not come out stronger. I came out terrified. That is the truth. Not wiser, not healed, not suddenly able to protect myself better. Carried that night into everything that came after it. And it changed the shape of how I followed. It changed how I saw people. It changed how I saw myself. It changed what I believed danger looked like. It changed what I believed I deserved. I was somewhere I was not supposed to be that night. And because of that, I turned everything back on myself. I did not know how to name what had been done to me as violence without also drowning in shame. So I made it my fault. I made it my secret. I made it my burden. I carried it alone. And when a young girl carries something that alone, the rest of her life does not come out right. Mine did not. That right there is why this chapter cannot be made pretty, right? It can't. Because there are some parts of a testimony that if you clean them up too much, then you lose what God actually reached into, right? And I know people like neat stories. They like clean versions. They like the after picture. They like when you can say, oh, I went through this, then God saved me and now everything's okay, right? But that's not how life works. At least that's not how mine worked. And I didn't come out of all that, right, and come stronger. I came out scared. I came out terrified. I came out carrying shame. I came out making choices out of fear. I came out thinking what happened to me was my fault. And when you believe something like that about yourself, it changes what you will accept. It changes what you think you deserve. It changes what you think danger looks like. And danger starts feeling normal. And I think about that, why it hits so different now, right? Is because after losing Kody, I had to go back through everything, right? That's how my brain works. I mean, it just works that way anyway. I cannot leave things unfinished. I have to understand. I have to search. I have to go back through dates, pictures, posts, words, memories, anything. I'm trying to see always, what did I miss? What did I not understand? What was God showing me that I did not know how to look at just yet, right? And so while reading this chapter, I kept thinking, God, you were there even then. Even though I didn't know who God was, even when I was not even living for God, even when I was so far gone, I didn't even know what rescue looked like, right? I mean, that does not make the pain okay. It does not erase what happened. It does not make any of it something I would choose. But it does tell me that God was not absent from the pit. And maybe somebody needs to hear that, because maybe you're in a place right now where you think because it's messy that God's not there. But I'm telling you, sometimes God is in the mess before you even know how to call him by his name, right? And that's just one section of it. And the next part I want to read is not because I want to sit in darkness. It's because this is where you start to see that even in the middle of all the mess, there was something in me that was still fighting for my children. And that matters because when I look back at it now, I can see God had already put motherhood in me as a fight, right? Even when I could not fight for myself, right? I didn't think I was worth fighting for, right? But I fought for them ever since they were born. Fought for both of my kids. Fought the trenches of hell for both of my kids. All right. So this part of it here is, but there was another truth living inside of it. I was falling deeper into darkness. I was not healed. I was not wise, but I was still trying to keep my daughter from having to live inside of all the darkness I was living in. Something in me was anchored. I would not let my daughter see that life. As messed up as I was, I knew enough to know that she should not have to watch her mother drowning in it. I knew I was wrong. I knew I was a mess. And somehow, even in the middle of all that darkness, there was something fierce in me when it came to my children. I did not know how to save myself, but I still wanted to protect them. And that matters to me now. Because later, when people look back and wonder how I survived any of it, part of the answer is motherhood was already alive in me while the rest of me was breaking apart. And that part right there makes me stop every time I go back and look at it, right? Because I can look back at who I was then and tell the truth. I was a mess. I was lost. I was making choices out of trauma and fear and darkness. I was not saved. I was not healed. I was not sitting somewhere making really wise decisions. No. But one thing was always true. I love my children, right? Like without my children, without me getting pregnant with my daughter, when I got pregnant with him, I probably would not be sitting here today, right? Without me having my son, right? I would not be sitting here today, right? My children showed me what actual love felt like in return before I knew who God was, right? And sometimes people don't understand, right? That two things can be true at the same time, right? A person can be broken and still love with everything they got. A person can be in darkness and still have something inside them refuse to let their children be swallowed whole by it. A person can be lost and still have God reaching into them on the parts that's not dead yet. That is why I say God requires a mess to understand the message. Because if I tell you this clean part, like everything's all clean, then you don't understand the kind of mercy that God had to use to reach me. Jesus did not reach into a slightly confused life. He reached into a pit, a real pit, a dark pit, a place where I could not climb out of on my own, a place where I did not even know that I was trapped in. And now, after losing Kody, I read that and I realized my whole life had been teaching me something about fighting for my children. That was not new when grief came, right? That had been in front of me from the very beginning. And I think that's why grief hurts so much the way that it does, right? I've always, my whole entire life, my kids' whole entire life, I have been fighting for my children, fighting to protect them, trying to keep them safe, trying to stand between them and anything that could hurt them. And then when you lose one of them, there is a part in your mind, right, that absolutely does not know what to do. It goes back, it searches. It replays. It asks God, why? It asks, what did you miss? It asks, what else could you have done? It asks, how could you have survived so much then and not get to keep your son here? I don't have clean answers for that. I don't have any answers for that. I have faith. I have God. I have the truth that Kody is with him. I have the truth that God saved my son in ways that I could not see, but I don't have a clean answer that makes this part right here, aching, stop. And I'm not going to pretend that I do, right? I still don't get it. So the next part, all right. So the next part is where the chapter moves into life with Kody, right? Because before it was just me and my daughter, and then it moves into life with Kody, right? And well, I'll describe him as the man who got me pregnant with Kody, right? That's all the credit I'm going to give him. And I don't say that out of hate. I say that out of reality of his role, right? Again, just reality of his role. He was just the man who got me pregnant. And I'm not reading sections of this to like stay in trauma, right? I'm reading it because there are moments in this chapter where I can see now God was already showing his hand, even when I had no idea what to call it then. Okay, so this is another section, another part from in that chapter. By 2000, I met a man who became the man who got me pregnant with my son. At first, I thought he was wonderful. That is how trap often begins. Not with obvious terror, with what hope looks like. A few months later, I was pregnant with my son, Kody. The minute I found out, I stopped doing everything. Whatever else was wrong in me, I stopped. I loved my children. I would quit for them. I would fight for them. I would do what I needed to do for them. They were always the reason I fought so hard in this messed up world I was trapped in. At first, things were good between us. Then the new wore off fast and he changed. Or maybe the mask just dropped. Either way, what came out was dark. It started with verbal abuse, mind games, constant tearing down, the kind of words that make you smaller every day until you start fitting inside the size they were assigned to you. And that worked on me because already had no respect for myself. I already felt like I was nothing. Abuse does not have to work very hard when trauma has already prepared the ground. Then it turned real violently towards me. So that line right there, abuse, when I read that again, abuse does not have to work very hard when trauma has already prepared the ground. I think that is something a lot of people need to understand. Sometimes people look from the outside and say, why did you stay? Why did you go there? Why did you believe that? Why did you let someone talk to you that way? Why didn't you just leave sooner? And I understand those questions from the outside, but from the inside, when trauma has already taught you that you are nothing, it doesn't take much for somebody else to convince you to live like you are nothing. That is why rescue had to go deeper than just a person leaving. Rescue had to go into what I believed about myself. Rescue had to go into what fear had trained in me. Rescue had to go into my nervous system, my mind, my choices, my reactions, the way I heard tone, the way I braced for danger, the way I thought love was supposed to feel. And this is why I cannot tell my story like it was just a little rough season. It was a pit. It was hell. And now when I am just literally sitting here in all of this, when I am missing Kody, when I am trying to keep standing, I see something I didn't see fully before. God did just not pull me out one time and leave me alone. He taught me over the years what it means to keep surviving after some things should have destroyed me over and over and over again. That does not make me strong in the way people like to see strong. I don't feel strong. Most of the times I feel like I'm just functioning, pieces missing everywhere. I feel like I'm doing everything with half my heart in heaven and I'm still here. And I know I'm not here because I'm powerful. There's nothing powerful in me at all. And I know that I'm not here because I figured everything out. I am here because God keeps reaching into places I could not climb out of myself. And that's the truth of it. I couldn't climb out of any of this. So the next section of the book that I want to read is about the closet prayer. This is one of those parts that I didn't even understand when it happened. I did not know it was foundational. I did not know later when I looked back and realized that this was the first prayer that I ever said in my whole entire life, right? First prayer. And what gets me is that the person that was telling me to pray was my daughter. My daughter, a child in a closet in fear. That was the mess. It's also the message too. Here's the section about the closet prayer. There are two moments in that life that still stand up inside of me with terrible clarity. One was the scene of my children and me hiding in the closet. I remember hiding there with my children. My daughter was 5 and Kody was almost 2. She whispered, "Pray, Mama. Pray to God." I whispered back, "What are you talking about?" She whispered again, "Just pray, pray." That was the first prayer I ever said. I didn't even remember it until after I got saved, but I know it now. I whispered, "God, please help me. I am so scared. I need you." I didn't believe in him then. I didn't think he heard me. I did not think this so-called imaginary God would care. Was I saved then? No. Was I a believer then? Not even close. That section right there, that was the first prayer. I was an atheist before. I didn't believe in God. I didn't think about God. My daughter, girl, 5 years old, scared, looked at me, hiding in a closet, whispered, "Mama, pray." Right? I told you I would do anything for my kids. Anything. Even pray to a God that I didn't believe in if it meant protecting my kids. Okay. I cannot read that section without thinking about mercy, right? Because I did not believe in God. I did not know him. I didn't have church words. I didn't have theology. I didn't know how to make a prayer sound right. I did not know anything except I was scared and my babies were there. I needed help. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to call. All I could think about is this man is going to kill us. That's all I could think about. If my kid's safe, I didn't think God heard me. I didn't think about it after that. And now I know God heard me. That is the part that breaks me. He heard me when I didn't even believe that he was real. He heard me. I had no idea how to come to him. He heard me hiding in a closet with my kids, whispering a prayer. It did not sound holy at all. It sounded terrified. And maybe that is another thing I want people to hear. Your prayer, it doesn't have to sound pretty for God to hear it. Your life does not need to be cleaned up first for God to hear you. Your words do not have to be polished. Sometimes the most realist prayer you will ever pray is the one that comes out of your chest when you do not know what else to do. God, please help me. I am so scared. I need you. That is not polished. It's not churchy. It's not dressed up. That's a mess, right? But it was real. And I think about that now. Because after losing Kody, so many of my prayers sound messy again. God, I miss my son. Can't do this alone. God, why him and not me? God, I trust you, but I don't understand. God, please help me. Help me make it through this day. God, show me where you are, right? Because I know you're here. I can't feel anything except just missing him, right? And maybe those prayers, right? They're not polished either, but they're real. And I know that God hears desperate prayers. I know that because he heard a version of me that did not know how to believe, did not know how to pray, that did not even recognize who he was, but he heard me, right? And there's another part. Oh, sorry. There's another part that I want to read. And this one is also hard, right? Because it has Kody as being a little boy. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not reading any of this to be dramatic. Like, this is like parts of my book, right? My testimony and stuff, my sons and what God has done. But when I went back over this, it hits different, right? It just, all of it hits different. And sometimes just writing things down and going back over them, you start ministering to yourself, right? So writing this book has helped me in ways that I can't explain people, but it's important, right? Because it makes you think, right? It lets you put these jumbled up thoughts, all this talking in your head. It lets you put it on paper or in a book, right? And it lets you get it out, right? It lets you learn how to process this. And so this chapter is got Kody in it, because even then, right? Kody was Kody. Kody was Kody, even as a little boy. And there was something in him that always wanted to protect me. He was 2 years old and he was already my little Superman, right? Cody's always been my little Superman. So not long after that came the last day. The last day I was with that monster. He was raging again. My daughter was at school. My son and I were at the house. He dumped all the kids' clothes out in the living room. I had been trying to leave him again without him finding out. I tried so many times before and always got caught. He found out that I was hiding money from him. He was furious. He poured gasoline all over the children's clothes. Then he started beating me in front of my son. My son was screaming, "Leave mommy alone. Leave mommy alone." Kody, 2 years old, always my Superman. The smell of gasoline began to get strong. I put Kody out on the porch. I was terrified about what might happen next. That part right there is hard for me to read out loud. Of course, because I replay, right? But because that was Kody, 2 years old, my little Superman, already caring, already wanting to protect his mom, and already had a heart that never changed. And as I've said this before, and I will probably say it for the rest of my life, Kody's heart never turned cold. From the first day of his life to the last breath on this earth, he loved deeply. He cared about people. He was beautiful inside and out. And when I read that part now, it doesn't just remind me of the danger that we're in. It reminds me who Kody was from the beginning. That is what makes grief so complicated, right? Because you're not just missing person at one age. You're missing every version. You are missing every version of them. I miss my baby, the one I held in my arms, the one I gave birth to. I miss my little Superman Kody, the one that yelled, "Leave mommy alone," my fishing buddy. I miss the boy who made me laugh with his theories. I miss the young man who would talk to me about life. I miss the sun that was woven in to every second of my life. And after reading this chapter, it made me remember that God knew him too. God saw that little boy on the porch. God saw me trying to survive. God saw my daughter. God saw the whole mess. Even when I did not even know him, he knew us. That is not a small thing to me now, because sometimes after loss, your mind wants to go back and ask God, where were you? Where were you here? Where were you there? Where were you when I was scared, God? Where were you when I was struggling? Where were you when my son was struggling? Where were you when I could not see what was coming? And I don't have the answers, but I can go back and look at my own life and say, he was there before I knew he was there. He was there before I knew he was moving. He was hearing me before I even believed he could hear me. That matters. Now, next section I want to kind of read is, sorry, just checking something. Pulling it up here. Now, the next section that I want to read is where the part where I heard that still small voice, right? Because this is one of those moments where I understand it so much differently now. At the time, I thought maybe I was losing my mind. Now I know that voice, right? Now I know that voice was God. And there it was, a still small voice from out of nowhere. It said, get the keys and go ahead, take your son. Say he needs a drink and tell him you're getting your daughter out early so he doesn't have to wait. I thought I was going crazy. Where was this voice coming from? Did he already beat a concussion into my brain so badly I was hearing things? I was so confused. And there it was again. Get the keys, take your son, say he needs a drink, and tell him you are getting your daughter out early so he doesn't have to wait. I sat there arguing with myself. Was I really going to ask for the keys when he just broke in my hand for a cigarette? Was I trying to die in front of my son? Then I did it. Somehow, without questions asked, I managed to get the keys, and he did not even realize it. I told him all that I heard, and before I knew it, we were out. That right there, that was all God. I didn't know it then, right? But I know it now. And this is where I keep coming back to this thought. God was already speaking to me before I knew his voice. He was already guiding before I knew how to follow. He was already making a way where I thought there was no way. And I don't say that lightly, because when you have been through things like that, you know the difference between a nice thought and a way out. That voice was not a motivational thought, not something I come up with on my own, right? I was broken. I didn't have any direction, right? Everything I tried failed. Everything I was doing failed. That voice, that still small voice, it was instructions. It was very specific. It cut through panic and it told me exactly what to do. And if I had not had listened to that voice, I don't know how much longer any of us would have been here, right? That's why I cannot make my story polished, because if I polish the mess too much, I lose the miracle of how God spoke in the middle of it. And after losing Kody, I still think about that, and I think about that small voice differently now, because I needed God to speak to me in ways I could recognize now too. Not always audible, not always with my ears, not always in a moment like that, but in details, in timing, and thought, in scripture, in memory, in pieces of a puzzle, right? And something that lines up in the way that reminds me, I have not left you, right? And sometimes that is what I'm holding on to. Not a perfect explanation, just the truth that God has never stopped reaching, right? Never. So this section here is about after we get out of the cart, right? And We get out of the car and we go in. All right. So my son and I made our way to the front office. I was going to go back out to him again, but there it was again. That same still, small, faint voice that had told me to get out of the car now was telling me, tell them, tell someone, anyone, if you don't, your kids will not survive. Tell them, tell them, tell them. Kept hearing it. Tell them your kids won't survive. And that's when I did. That secret I had been keeping for 3 years. I finally told someone at my daughter's school. I broke down pleading. Please help me. Please help me. I can't do this anymore. Please, he won't stop beating me. Please help me, right? Tell them, tell them. Thinking back and rereading that again that I wrote, it hits, right? It hits me too. Because secrets keep people trapped. Shame keeps people trapped. Fear keeps people trapped. And sometimes the beginning of rescue is not this grand, big thing. Sometimes it is telling someone. Sometimes it is finally saying, please help me. I can't do this anymore. And I think about that now with grief too, right? Because grief can make you want to disappear inside of yourself. It can make you feel like nobody understands. So why even talk? It can make you tired of explaining. It can make you feel like if you say how bad it really is, people won't know what to do with it. But I also know that God keeps pushing me to speak, to write, to make the songs, to make these videos that I'm doing here, to put words around the things I'd rather keep inside because they hurt too bad, right? God keeps pushing me, not because I've got any of this figured out. He keeps pushing me, I think, because somebody else out there, whoever may be flipping through the YouTube or whatever this is playing on right now, somebody else may be in the pit too. And they may need to know that God can still reach you there. That's why I keep doing this. That's why I keep showing up. Not because I'm okay. Not because I got everything figured out. It's because maybe my mess helps somebody understand the message, right? Now, this next part is after I got out, right? And this matters because leaving the pit did not make everything inside of me suddenly healed. Right. And this is something I think people misunderstand. It's not just about the abuse while you're in it, right? But it's also about the grief too. You can be out of something, out of that bad relationship, out of that abuse, out of that trauma, out of what happened and everything, and still carry what it did to you. You can be physically somewhere else and still have your mind, right? And your whole entire body, your nervous system, still trained by what happened. So this is more so like the aftermath, right? So this is after things happened at school and got away. There's sections in between that, but this is part of that same chapter. And when I left, I did not walk out into some movie ending where the sky opens and everything gets better. I walked out into aftermath. I did not have full theology for that moment then. I only knew that something outside my fear had cut through the noise and shown me how to get my babies out. That is important because after abuse, you do not leave and instantly become free inside. You carry fear with you. You carry the memory of rooms. You carry the sound of voices. You carry the habits of bracing before everything has even stopped. You carry a body trained by terror in places that are no longer actively dangerous and still feel danger everywhere. That was the life after leaving, not instant freedom. Aftermath. That word right there, aftermath. Right? That is where I live a lot right now because losing Kody has aftermath too. There's the day that everything happened, right? And then there is the life after. And people sometimes think the day is over, then you're on the part that's after. So surely it's got to get easier. But aftermath is not easy. Aftermath is when everything starts showing you what it changed. Aftermath is waking up and remembering again. Aftermath is reaching for your phone and texting your son, even though you know he's in heaven. Aftermath is still holding his jacket, right? Aftermath is smelling his shirt every day. Aftermath is touching his necklace with the fingerprint on it. Aftermath is when you've got to take a rubber silicone bracelet that was his when y'all first started to go to celebrate recovery because you've worn it to pieces and it's falling apart, right? Aftermath. Aftermath because he loved this watch, right? Aftermath. Aftermath when you've got to kiss your hand and tell his ashes back here good night. Aftermath because you are still their mom with everything inside of you, and you are doing everything you know how to do because all you knew how to do was fight for your kids. So you still fight for your kids, even if you can't reach them. Aftermath is people expecting you to function like your world did not split open. Aftermath is trying to keep doing projects, keep making songs, keep writing the book, keep taking care of who needs to be taken care of. Aftermath is while parts of you are still standing in the room where you lost your child every day, whether you were physically there or not, part of you always be in that room, in that space, in that moment where it hit you. You could move 1,000 miles away where it happened, but part of you remains there. And reading chapter 3, right, reminds me that I have lived aftermath before. Not the same, nothing compares that I have lived through before. Not the rape, not the abuse, not all the things that happened to me, not all the struggles that I've had, none of it, not the drugs, all the stuff that I have lived through before those aftermaths. None of it equals to this aftermath. But I do know what it is to survive something and still carry the shape of it inside your body. I know what it is to be out but not be free yet. I know what it is to brace after the danger has passed. And grief does that too. It trains your body to expect the next hit. It makes peace feel unsafe because you know how fast life can change. It makes the normal feel strange because nothing is normal anymore. That's why I keep saying, I am not the same. I'm not. How could it be? But I know this, right? God reached me in one aftermath, right? And he can hold me in this one too. So another section I don't want to go over in my book is why in the book I feel like this chapter about the pit has to be told, right? So because if you don't understand the full weight of the abuse, the drugs, the terror in the rooms, the scenes at the neighbor's place, the first time I heard God's voice, the closet prayer, the gasoline, the life after leaving, you will not understand what it means when I say God saved me. If the pit is not told truthfully, the rescue that comes later will sound smaller than what Jesus actually saved me from. He did not save me from a rough relationship. He saved me from a living hell that had gotten into my nerves, my thoughts, my instincts, my self-assent, my sense of self, and my idea of what life was supposed to feel like. That is what he reached into. And by the time he began drawing me fully towards himself, I was not someone who only needed encouragement. I needed resurrection in places nobody could see. Resurrection. That part right there is just like, I don't know, just places nobody can see but God. You can't even see them fully yourself, right? Because if the pit is not told truthfully, then the rescue sounds smaller than what Jesus actually saved me from. And I think that is true in more than one way, right? If I don't tell the truth, right, about what grief is doing to me, then people will not understand what it means that God is still holding me. If I pretend that I'm fine, then God gets a smaller testimony than what he is actually doing, because the testimony is not that I am healed and everything is okay. The testimony is that I am broken beyond repair, broken beyond what anything in this world can fix, broken beyond repair. And somehow God still keeps me breathing. The testimony is that I miss my son with everything inside of me. And still I lift my hands to the same God who has my son. The testimony is that I have questions, lots of questions, but my faith has not walked away. I gotta see my son. I gotta see him again. The testimony is that I do not need to understand, but I still know where my help comes from. That is not polished. That's messy faith. Right. And maybe that's the kind of faith that's real enough to survive the pit. So reading that chapter made me realize, right, that God has been doing this in my life for a long time. He has been reaching into places nobody could see. He has been putting language to things I did not understand. He has been saving me in layers, right? Layers. He has been teaching me that rescue does not look like everything is instantly changed and better. Sometimes rescue looks like one simple instruction at a time. Get the keys, go in, tell someone. Sometimes rescue looks like one whispered prayer in a closet. Sometimes rescue looks like one more day where you did not die. Sometimes rescue looks like one more day where you were able to protect your children. One more day where God had his hand over you when you didn't even know who he was. And I am living right now in another kind of survival. I survived the pit in chapter 3, but now I am surviving Kody, losing Kody, my son. And I don't say that like it's done. It is not done. I'm still in it. I'm still learning, breathe through it. I'm still learning how to live while my son's in heaven. I'm still learning how to be Kody's mama here on earth. I'm still learning how to know when I send a text that it's not going to change the read, right? But what I know is this: the same God who reached down into that pit 21 years ago is the same God holding me now. The same God who heard me in the closet when I cried back then is the same God when I cry for Kody. The same God gave me the way out with detailed instructions is the same God who gives me enough strength for today. The same God who knew me before I knew him is the same God who knew Kody from the beginning and has him now. And that is where I have to stand, y'all. Even when I don't understand any of this, it leaves me sitting truth that I'm not standing because I'm strong. I'm standing because God has kept me through things that should have killed me, that should have ended me. I am standing because he is teaching me survival in a way I did not understand at the time. I am standing because my children have always been fight inside of me. I am standing because Kody's life always still matter. His story always still matter. His heart always still matter. God was doing in him and did in him still matters. And I will not let the enemy reduce my son's story to the one day that I lost him. Kody is not just the hardest day of my entire life. Kody is my son. Kody is my boy. Kody is my little Superman yelling, "Leave mommy alone." Kody is the one who loved deeply. He is the one who was reaching for God too. He is the one who God has now. And I am still his mama. That's why I keep going. Not because I want to. A lot of the days I don't want to. Not because I'm okay. I'm not okay by any stretch of the means of what people think okay should look like. But because God has not released me yet from purpose. Because I have other kids here. I have grandbabies and one on the way. I have family. I have to finish this. I have songs. I have these talks. I have people who may be sitting in their own pit at 3 a.m. in the morning, just this lost in heart, that need to know that, yeah, God can reach that low. He can reach all the way down in the darkest of darks, in the pits of hell. All he needs is a whisper. All he needs is a whisper. If that means I have to sit here messy and tell the truth, then that is what I'm gonna do, because God does not need my story to be cleaned up to use him. He needs truth. And truth is, I was in a pit I couldn't climb out of, but God reached in. And the truth is, I'm in grief and pain so much with this that I cannot climb out on my own. But God is still reaching in. So if you're listening, guys, if you've heard any of this, and you're listening and you're in a pit right now, I'm not going to give you some little cute, short, everything's okay answer. Tell you just to be positive, right? I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you everything's going to be fine, right? I'm not going to tell you, hurry up and heal, right? I'm going to say this truth, right? Tell someone, if you're in a situation that you do not need to be in, if you are being abused, if you are being hurt, or if you are in a situation that is not safe for you, for your kids, or you know of a situation, guys, tell someone, right? Right. Even if all you can do is say, God, help me. It doesn't have to be loud. Mine was a whisper, hiding in a closet, scared half to death with my children from a person who did not even believe in God in the first place. That is where mine came from. God, help me. God, help. Had to be a whisper because he was here. He was there. Didn't want him to find us. So it had to be the smallest whisper. But he heard, right? God don't need no grand big gesture, going to church and doing all this. God doesn't need that. He needs this. Like I always told Kody and Caitlin and Ava, God right here. That's where you find God at. That's where God comes, right? Do the next right thing in front of you. If you're in danger, get help. Tell someone. Let someone know. Don't let shame keep you silent. If you're grieving, stop trying to make grief sound acceptable for people who don't want to understand. If you're exhausted, stop giving everything of yourself that you are draining the life out of yourself. If God is telling you to move, move. If God is telling you to speak, speak. If all you can do is just breathe and whisper his name like I had to do, then breathe and whisper his name. That counts. A closet prayer counts. A broken prayer counts. A messy prayer counts. A prayer that says, God, I'm so scared. I just need you right now counts. And maybe you will not understand it at the time that it has happened, right? Trust me, God will let you understand it when you need to. I did not understand mine when I prayed it, right? I didn't say that prayer and was instantly changed and whisked away into some wonderful thing. It took years after that prayer to finally give my life to God. I didn't understand the voice when I heard it. I did not understand the rescue while I was living in it. But later, I can look back and say, you know what? That was God. Later, I think back on things that should have taken me and my kids out. And I can replay that. This time I look at it at a different angle. This time I look at it and I see what was going on. But then I see this gigantic hand of protection, right? Going, okay, you can do this. Like the story of Job. You can do this, but you can't do that. This giant hand of protection overshadowing me and my kids, right? And I didn't even see it then, but God lets me see it now, right? He shows me back. He lets me see those things. And those moments, if you have them, will blow your mind. Definitely write them down. And right now, in this grief, I believe there are things that I am going to understand later, which is why I journal, right? Which is why I'm writing a book, which is why I do what I do, right? Which is why I do these videos, because I may not understand everything that I'm doing right now, but when I watch it, rewatch it, reread it, I understand. Like crying out loud, that puzzle back there, like I said in my last video, I put that puzzle together and didn't realize it until I put that puzzle together with my son in 2024 and didn't realize it until I made last week's video that the piece of the puzzle that was missing was across the words, your hug. It stretched across your hugs. I did not realize that, right? And there's some things that I know that will never ever make sense this side of heaven, but I believe God will keep showing me where he was. I believe he is going to give me enough light for the next step that I am on. So this is what I wanted to talk about was my book and the little sections in there. I mean, I know I'm not perfect. I'm not like some famous YouTuber or whatever. And I honestly don't care. Like I said, that was just something that hit me while I was working on my book. And chapter 3, the pit I could not climb out of. And I think I understand why. now. That chapter mattered so much because the pit had to be told truthfully for the rescue to be understand truthfully. And maybe that's the truth in all of us, right? Maybe we don't need to make the mess pretty for God to use it. Maybe we just need to tell the truth about where God reached us. Maybe the message is not hidden behind the mess. Maybe sometimes the mess is what helps somebody finally understand the message. So guys, if this has helped you, this made you feel any kind of less alone, maybe share it with someone who may be in the pit or in grief or in abuse struggles. Maybe they don't know how to reach God. Share it. Subscribe if you want to keep walking down this twisty loop of a road with me. Not because it's some perfect polished channel that's got everything figured out and a billion views and was so popular. But if you just want somebody who just talks honestly about real life, like grief, right? Things that are never talking about. And give me a thumbs up. Give me a like, share, comment. Always welcome to comment. Post your things that you got going on if you need prayer. God's giving you some details, some revelation. Guys, share. Because it is in us talking about it. Share your kids' names. Always share your kids' names on there. Because even in like all of our broken pieces, right? God uses our broken pieces to help somebody else keep breathing. You don't know what part of any of this that you say may help somebody else do something differently than what they were about to do. So as always, for Kody, same bad time, same bad channel. I love you, bubs. I love you. And to my oldest daughter, I love you too, babe. She can't currently watch my videos right now. By the way, she's pregnant and I don't want her getting emotional. But anyway, I love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this helped somebody because this helped me. Hey guys, see you next week.